everybody, and thanks for coming. This is the fellowship workshop for A Blade of Grass. It's for our new socially engaged art fellowships, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them after the star of the evening has had his moment. The program here tonight is designed to do two things. One, we want to offer an opportunity for artists to really think about and engage with the notion of socially engaged art. What does it mean? How is it practiced? And so our fellowship workshops are a way of inviting in people who have a lot of experience in the field, people like John Ahearn, right, who's been working with communities for many years very successfully and very energetically. And so he was, of course, one of the first people that came to mind when we were trying to think of some good models for this. And then following that, there'll be an opportunity to engage with John about his work. And then, of course, I will, as I'm Elizabeth Grady, I'm Programs Director at A Blade of Grass. I will go through our application process and give you an opportunity to ask any questions you may have about that. We also have some members of our staff here already, more on their way. So you'll have an opportunity to interface with them, and I'll introduce them in person in front of you all so that you can put names to faces so that you know who we are. It's very important to us as an organization to be transparent. So many organizations that give grants out are kind of, in their own little office building someplace with the doors locked, and we don't want to be that kind of an organization. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to John, who will lead off the evening. Thanks so much for coming, John.
Okay. Actually, thank you. I talk too much about too many things, so I'm going to simplify this tonight. I just picked 5 of the earliest images of work of mine, which all include Rigoberto Torres in them. He's in Orlando, Florida today at the moment, so he's not able to be here with us. Anyways, so I came to New York with my twin brother Charlie was already here, and I came in '74, which was, I think that was the year that they had a headline in a newspaper that said Ford to New York City dropped dead. That was the cover of the New York Post, I think it was. Yeah. So can we go back a little bit? I don't think so. That one is the first one. This should be anyways. All right, so this is, can you hear me like this? Is this all right? Maybe this. This is in Fashion Moda in 1979, and there was a series of many accidents that brought me there. So I was very fortunate to participate in the activities there. I got started in the very beginning of '79 and ended up sort of staying for a whole year working there. And the 2 directors were Joe Lewis and Stephen Ines are in the back right here. And in the front is a friend of mine, Tom Otterness, who was very influential. And I can remember in the mid-'70s talking to Tom about what we called real art. And we meant it sort of tongue-in-cheek, referring to like popular statuary that you might see, or something like if you go to Coney Island and you see the rides, the figures that are painted on the outside of amusement rides. And we just thought the art that we saw around us, we were enjoying so much, and we were sort of anti-formalist in our thinking. And so this is related to Collab, this group, which is a group of artists that got together in the late '70s and started organizing events that were, it's sort of like post-performance and in terms of art history, let's say. It was sort of after the kind of more formalist things that were done outdoors with, with this earth art and things like that. So accidentally, I got started doing life casting, and I went, I had done life casting accidentally for some friends, and it turned into a performance, which I'm not a performance artist, but I ended up doing it like that. And I went to Fashion Moda, and we did a casting in the front window, and the response was so strong for me, personally so strong, that I came back the next day and the next day and stayed a whole year. And what I meant by the response was strong was that my feelings with my fellow artists downtown was often feelings of alienation and questioning my identity, because I didn't really feel like I was making it properly, and I didn't know how to be who I wanted to be. And I found in the Bronx, when we were doing this casting work, I found all of a sudden I had this crowd of people that I was talking to and I was involved with, and everybody was coming back every day, and it gave me a lot, and it was very generous to me, and it made me feel like a worthwhile person. And so the most important person I met was Rigoberto Torres, whose fine arm we see right in the foreground here. And he was actually still in high school at the time, and just leaving Taft High School, and we began to form a partnership, which is still happening right now. And his uncle had worked in his uncle had statuary factories where they made botanica items. And he'd have a factory where they were mass producing statues of Elvis and Jesus and the Buddha, and every kind of image that was being sold in these botanicas, or in furniture stores or whatever. They were making these statues and selling them for like $30 a piece. And we thought, conceptually as artists, we thought this was very exciting, And also, because we were a little retrograde in our development, we, instead of like understanding art form or something like that, I actually was enjoying this art that Uncle Raul was making. And so I like to think of this as like the School of Athens here, by Raphael. You know how there's that painting that Raphael did where everybody is like sitting around on the steps, and they're all having philosophical discussions. And so I just like to say that I think the level of communication was good. Okay, so anyways, they accumulated and formed the, we called it the South Bronx Hall of Fame, and that became like an item. And that was sort of meant as tongue-in-cheek. So we'll go to the next one. Another accident came up, which gave Rigoberto Torres and I, we now had I had moved to the Bronx in the meantime, and we were sharing a studio at Walton Avenue, and this opportunity came up to do some public art for the, I forget whether it was, I don't think it was percent for art, but it was a public art job that came up. And actually they wanted us to do it in the North Bronx, and I was so tied to the South Bronx that I really insisted that we find a location down there. And we did. And as I said, I get talking too much about stuff. I got to this neighborhood, which was a totally devastated area in the Bronx, which turns out where Longwood was started later. But I got to the neighborhood, and there was one wall that really stood out. This one right here See that wall? And when I went into the neighborhood, I said, God, this is the most beautiful site for a mural. And I was totally into, you know, the work that all the Mexican artists had done in fresco in the 20s, and then they did mosaics in the 1950s. There were things that were outdoors in Mexico City, and I was sort of an admirer of that work. So we had the idea we were going to expand on the sculpture that we were making with the faces and do figurative work. But it turned out that this is the wall, actually, that the grant that we received was for. So what we decided to do was the first year we did 2 walls, and we still did the other wall. And so this one is after the Sister Sledge song called We Are Family. And sincerely, that's the way I felt. I felt that the work was, I was somehow being permitted to share family life. I was a sort of like a bachelor, was a bachelor. I had no children, and yet I could, the neighborhood was sharing their children with me, so I could enjoy this community feeling and be relieved of the anxiety and alienation that I felt downtown. Because I felt like I could, for some reason, I felt like I could relax. And so, do the next one, please. So in the distance, this is a close-up, more of a close-up of the other wall. And you can see it's called Banana Kelly for a reason, because it's shaped like a banana. And now Casita Maria is right in the neighborhood. Anybody know about Casita Maria? Do we have any Casita Maria fans out there? It's a great, great institution in the Bronx. And you should all get involved with Casita Maria. So I got to know the Potts family that were on this block, and they were doing this a block party where they had this African dance troupe, and the Potts family were the most prominent family in this building and straight down this block. And the girl in the middle is Javette, and her mother was the one doing this dance troupe. And I asked them if they were interested in making a piece of the girls jumping rope, and she said yes. So that's how we did it. And they actually, all 4 of them lived in this building right here. That's kind of amazing, isn't it? I think it's amazing. Okay, that's it. And actually, if you see it now, these murals are still up, but they've gone through many stages, and like all of us, they lose some of their youthful vigor and freshness. But the accumulation is also beautiful. And sometimes some of the ugly things that happen to them become beautiful over time. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to show you any of those images, but sometime if you're interested, I'll tell you how to go see how they look now. Okay, the next one. Oh, one thing I want to add about this is that for a very brief moment in the very beginning, I don't know how this happened, but by accident, the work at Fashion Modus was kind of hot in the art world, which is a subject that I want to talk about with everybody, but we'll get around to that. And so I was actually selling artwork for a brief time, and also making artwork that I was delivering to friends in the neighborhood who were working with me. And there was this weird split because I felt very uncomfortable that the larger group of people that I knew weren't able to see the work. So what I'm getting at is that doing these murals gave me a higher level of identity to present myself as. So when people would say, oh, hi, what are you doing? Instead of saying, oh, I'm making this artwork. No, I would say, we have a project. And we have an idea of something, a projection of something we want to create here. And this is the wall we're going to do it on. And somehow I felt more together. You know what I mean? Knowing that there was a purpose to my being there and why we were doing this work suddenly made more sense to me, you know? And it was much easier to talk about because people would say, oh, I see you're making these, but why, you know? But if you say I'm making a mural, everybody gets it, including me, you know? Okay, let's go to the next one. So this is more of the same, but now it's at another part of the Bronx where I actually happen to be living since the beginning of this thing, which was originally Rigoberto's neighborhood. And we're getting around to the last two images, and think of them as an introduction to this. We have this short DVD that I'm going to show you. It's an infomercial for this work that we do. And so I used to drive Rigoberto crazy because I always felt like there was never enough on the wall, right? So we were, you know, you could imagine 5 would have been fine, but instead I wanted to, so we had nails going from one end of the block to the other, and I just wanted every cast. And so we were also borrowing casts that were from people's homes, and I'm going to show you one in the next picture, and that also relates to the DVD that I'm going to show you. And yeah, no, not yet. So, so we sometimes, so Rigoberto was the first one to cast at Walton Avenue, and he did that in 1979. He took the materials that we were sharing at Fashion Moda and went home with them, which is where he was living, right here. And he did it on the sidewalk in front of the building. So he kind of started something there. But I just want to observe, share an observation with you, is that location is very important, how you relate to people, where you are. And it gets so sensitive to me, I think, that the difference between having your table here and having it here and having it here really makes a difference in terms of who we're talking to. It changes. So where you are, you know, sometimes people talk about the community, but I think it can be very specific. And so if someone says, oh, that person, he was rejected by the community, I don't know what they're talking about, because it really is, it's a very general way to talk about something, that community. I think you need to narrow it down to who were, okay. One side of the block was more like Latin. The other side of the block was more black. Does that make more sense? Mm-hmm. So if you're moving down the block here or here, you can imagine that it shifts who the social relationships and everything changes as you're going from one end of the block to the other. Okay, next slide. And this one I'm just throwing in to give you an image that's related to the DVD, which is two things. One is I'm showing you what it looks like when you have the I just forgot their name. I just had I don't know why, but I was thinking of Maria. Anyways, what I was going to say about them is that point out, you know, the other art that they have, and point out also the fact that we were kind of designing the cast to look like a heart, which is kind of sentimental looking, but I was getting sort of a kick out of that, you know. Okay, I think we're ready for the DVD. And then we'll have talk if we want to afterwards.
For a base, come on Kevin Green, let's rock this place.
Great, thank you. That's Rigoberto.
My name is Anton Rux, the Bull MC. I want to talk to you all about arts and crafts. You know, molds and rolls and things like that. Now it starts with a volunteer, a person from the crowd without any fear. Now, John is the man to get things done, cause while he's doing his mold, you'll have some fun. The number of molds that are done are two. There's one for him and one for you. He put them in places where people could see him. Walls, build-ups, even museums. Oh, I'll add to rock is my name, you see. And I'm the all-around loving the cool MC. And Kevin Green, you master beatbox, rock the people right out their socks.
Smile, let him do whatever he wants. Close your fingers a little bit. Let him do whatever he wants. It's a little on the chilly side. You can't stick out your chest too good.
I'm being very pushy because normally asking someone to smile is really the right thing to do, but I think I was seeing an expression that I liked that was very serious, so I was encouraging him to maintain that.
Oh, that's real.
I want to point out also that there were many, many artists on the block. Many of them. And one of them is, besides Rigoberto, there's Joe Torres, who's the sister of, whose sister we saw in the previous one. And the Super Son was a really good artist.
Johnny, you ready to come out? You say yeah, he's ready. Right? First this one. First this one. Loosen up. Let me get the straw. Get this straw. Watch it. Okay.
The boy is going to like it a lot because he wanted it to have a nice and simple, straight, you know. And when his mother don't know nothing about this. So.
Shh, don't tell anybody about that. It's a secret. It's supposed to be a surprise for her.
Yeah,
but he's really into it. He's been telling me a lot. He's gonna give it to his mother and all this stuff. You know, for me, the carving the eye is okay, but generally the thing is the painting is when you tend to do more of the real expression. The eye carving part is mainly to lay in a ground for where you're going to paint, you know.
Continue to attract to people who are attracted to you.
questions?
How did you feel when you saw the mother sort of breaking down like that, and what did she say afterwards?
You know, it's a little bit of a mystery to me exactly what she was crying about. And I've never quite gotten to the bottom of that. And all I can think of is that maybe she was crying because this was emotional for her for her son. Maybe it was bringing up memories from something about his childhood. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you asked me how I felt about it, right?
Right.
Well, I thought it reminded me of a kind of a Catholic thing. That's why I
Right.
was referring to that, like the Pietà or something, you know. And I thought that, you know, the sense of the suffering of life,
Right.
and also the way the statuary is very related to Catholicism. So I grew up in a parish church when I was little. That was a small parish church. It was all crowded with statuary all over the place. And it looked pretty much like the same as that,
Right.
you know.
So it was like a church-like
Church
figure
atmosphere,
for her
yes.
to see. It also occurred to me watching it that maybe her son was only going to get, her little baby was only going to get older from that point, and you captured
A
him
point in time.
that he was never going to get older from.
And you know, probably everybody knows about Tim Rollins here, right? And what kills me is he's got the KOS, these kids of survival. They're so accomplished and together and everything, but it hasn't been my experience when I was living in the Bronx. Although there were so many greatly talented people, but also it seemed that I was continually exposed to so much real tragedy, and where kids' lives were going was so heartbreaking. So what you're saying is very true, you know, that next thing you know, this kid might be on the street corner selling crack or something. And really could be doing that. And I don't mean the 1 in a million chance. I mean, like, maybe chances are pretty good that's what he's going to be doing.
Yeah.
So it's pretty heartbreaking. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting, 'cause you were talking a lot about how you got so much from the experience of living in the South Bronx and
Yeah.
getting so much from the people.
Yeah.
What do you feel about what you left, and how long is your relationship? And since you left there, I mean, what is the real impact of the work you did in the time you were there?
Should I stand up or just keep seated?
It's okay.
I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. You're asking me what effect did it have on people there?
Yeah, I guess, you know, short term and long term. I don't know how long you lived in the Bronx. I think those of us who do this kind of work feel that we get so much personally from that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and so what do you think really, you know, that you gave to that community?
Well, you know, sometimes if someone would say, oh, it's really nice what you're doing for people or something, and I'd always insist, first thing, I'm doing it for myself, and second, I'm doing it for art and the art world. I think it's good to have your ducks all lined up properly, so you understand what, I'm not doing it just to make people's lives better or something like that, but I think that when you know the thing of Tom Sawyer and whitewashing the fence? Mm-hmm. I always liked that idea, and I always use that as sort of a model for how I work, which is, I never like to ask people or to extend myself, but what I do like is to present what I am and find that the people that are interested in working with me tend to come to me and talk to me about it, you know? And that's not really what you're asking, though, is it? I mean, you want to know how it affected me in the long run?
No, I think the community, but also I think that you talked about how you're doing it for the art world, and that's interesting too. What I
mean by that is that, you know, one of our roles as artists is always a corrective role. Mm-hmm. We're always trying to take life as we know it and make a change in some direction as artists, you know. And so this is my idea, that this is something that is the correct thing for the art world to be dealing with, you know, sort of like that. I'm sorry, yeah?
One piece I've thought a lot about of yours is the 3 bronze sculptures.
Yes.
Across from the precinct. Maybe you could talk about how that transpired, because when I think about socially engaged art, I think about how much of a buzz or an effect it creates on those people. And that one seemed to really kind of explode in an uncontrollable way.
Right, kind of the other way.
Yeah. And I was always surprised too that you decided to take it down rather than let the community.
Self-interest again, right? What's your name?
Let.
Let?
Mm-hmm.
Let is asking something which may not be familiar to most of us here, but I would say the thing you just watched, this thing, another job came up, which was to do a percent for art project, and it was actually brought up to me by someone from the Bronx Museum that I was awarded, not Rigoberto Torres and I, but I alone was awarded this project. I don't know why I mentioned that, but.
Do you want to mention like the project for people who don't know?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
So I was awarded this project, and it was a percent for art project for me to do art that was like this other art that you see on the walls, but instead of being on somebody's wall in the neighborhood, it was going to be on the side of the newly built police precinct, the 44th precinct, and they had always loved having the precinct totally out of the neighborhood so they could come into the neighborhood when they had to and then leave when they wanted to. Whereas now this was going to be a new policing style, which was the precinct was dead center in the middle of the 44th precinct. And and it happened that I was doing freestanding figures at the time. This is getting too long.
Well, I don't know. It's such
Sorry.
an interesting piece.
Well, I think what Let is referring to is the fact that instead of the pieces being warmly received by the community and being addressing a kind of community interest, the pieces had an edgier expression to them, combined with the fact that they were set in front of this police precinct that was teenagers, and there was kind of a controversy over it, and I made a decision to have the pieces removed almost immediately after they're put in, which greatly relieved the government, the city government that was hosting this project. And I think people were really worried about it. There was the New York Post had something written that said, city pays $99,000 for racist art. I think that's what it said. So it had a bad spin to it.
Well, I guess that's what interests me, because I feel like art should engage those conversations, and like if there's racial tensions with a white artist being in South Bronx, and here you do something pretty innocent. You put, a girl on rollerblades,
Right.
guy with a boombox,
Yeah.
happens to be a big black guy with a hoodie with a dog, kind of like Trayvon,
Yeah.
and then suddenly that's seen as racist because you're depicting the youth.
No, I
which-
said the New York Post called it that.
Well, and there was a woman in the neighborhood too that kind of
Or
raised the
Daily
ruckus,
News, one of
right?
them. I'm sorry, what?
There was
Oh,
a-
yes, but this I think I was referring to that earlier when I said that the community is something that you have to be careful about, and that this actually wasn't literally down the block from where I lived. It was more like 4 blocks away or 5 blocks away. So it was in the area. But maybe this is getting beside the point a little bit for the purpose of this workshop here. I mean, I'm happy to talk plenty about it, but in a way, what we're trying to explore here is what do we want to do? Why do we want to do it? Why do we want to get involved with something that's called socially engaged art as opposed to something else? And you know, what is our role in this city other than being a spearhead for some kind of gentrification real estate speculation? What do we mean?
Well, I
in the
guess
city
like when,
besides that?
I mean, what I liked about it so much, I don't mean to take up the talk, but that you were actually kind of praising these youth, you know, by giving them sculptural form. Suddenly, this was a time when police were, you know, shooting a lot of these young kids. And here you were putting them in bronze form, kind of, you know, giving them a timelessness and a place in their community. And then it was interesting that the community, the same community, it's basically the mother of those kids, felt that by representing...
Wait. Now
Well-
you're getting confused. You're confusing because you're saying something nice and then you're saying, however, the community felt this and this and this. You know, if you're reporting this to me, I would love to hear what you have to say. But if you're repeating something that you've been told by somebody else, then
No,
it sounds
it's from
less.
it's a book. I forgot.
Yeah.
You're.
I love what. No, you're good. But I'm just saying that. I think we'll go to another question. Okay. Thank you.
I'm curious about the input of the people being cast during the creative process and also their involvement after the casts were mounted. What was their involvement in the process?
Everybody's different. And everybody's got some people this and some people that. You know, it's not an exact science as to what my relationship is with whichever person that I'm working with. Generally speaking, the cast that I'm making is going to be something that they want for their home, and they want to look good in this thing, right? And they want to look whatever ideal self. Isn't that natural that anybody who would receive a portrait of themselves wants to look a certain way? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, but I'm also particularly interested in the ones that were public, that were outside.
Oh, I see.
Layout, what was their involvement afterwards?
You don't mean beforehand, you mean involvement afterwards, you said.
Both during and after.
I just went to the Brooklyn Academy of Music with Selena and her mother to one of the murals that I didn't present here, and we just went with them like a month ago because there was some theatrical thing that was inspired by their statue, right? And this is done 30 years ago. So there's some sparks are happening, you know, but is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just have a purely technical question.
Sure.
These will last 20, 30 years?
Yes.
What material? I presume it's not plastic Paris.
Right. Well, here's the trick, is that Rigoberto brought many things to the table, including his uncle Raul Arce, who had a statuary factory, and he taught us how to do permanent rubber mold making for fiberglass fabrication. And then we used either boat paint or car paint on the pieces. So they're pretty long lasting. They're cast in fiberglass. Now, the originals that you saw of Juanito on the street, that's plaster. But what you do is then you take the plaster and you do a mold in rubber of that plaster. Right?
Maybe two, and the first one goes to the family.
That's another issue, right? We're talking about why are things outdoors for 30 years and they're okay? It's because they're fiberglass resin, right? Now, as for making two, I learned very early on that it didn't make sense to have, I'll charge you $20 for a cast. it never worked, any of these kind of relationships, but I found that the best thing is only work with people that want me to do something for them. And I found that was a great relationship to start with. So they're making something that I'm making something for myself. And I found that whether someone is interesting or not always will come out later. It doesn't have to be decided before you start something, you know?
And it seems like your collaborators are all self-selecting, that they've seen you on the street or they saw
Yes.
you at the gallery and they came
Yes.
forward because they knew
Yes.
that they wanted to
Yes.
participate.
Yeah. And like doing this casting on the street, that's where everybody comes from, is they're lined up. So if let's say if I was getting tired of doing everybody or something, you can start narrowing the focus. Say, well, I'm sorry, but this summer we're only doing children. And everybody goes, oh, you're just doing children? That's nice. So we only do kids, right? And then that gets much more intense because they have their own crowd, and also they're young, and they're going through more than a lot of the adults are. And they're more interesting in a lot of ways. But that way, you cut out, you don't have to deal with everybody. You could say, well, we're only casting kids now, okay? Sorry. So that's how we were doing it. But this was happening a long, long time ago. This was 30 years ago, so. Yes?
We have time for just one more question.
Okay.
Do you know the history of these people now? Do you have names of people that...
I'm sorry, what?
Do you know the history of those people, like that child? Do you know what's actually...
I've got a different answer for each person that you want to ask me about. I don't have a general history of all people. It's more like this person, yes, this one, no. And I'm sorry to say that I have not kept up with Juanito and his family. I don't know.
And would you presume to do this casting as an aged person? Which would be interesting to see that child.
You mean an older...
As an older person.
Yeah, you know who I've kept up with a lot is Raymond Garcia, who's the guy with a pit bull in the bronze statuary, right? And I've done casts with him this year. So I keep up with him because we're keeping up our thing going on, you know, relationship. I think that's it.
Well, thanks so much,
No,
John.
my pleasure.